It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. Go get 'em, George.
Britain has a new Labour Friends of Israel boss, Prime Minister Andy Burnham. And on the anniversary of the day that the Jews from the ghettos were moved from Warsaw and from Paris, beginning the death march to the death camps of the East, the Israeli leadership is talking about terrorism on the day anniversary, 80 years ago, that they blew up the King David Hotel and murdered 92 Brit citizens. And Donald Trump is hourly promising war crimes on Twitter. It's all coming up on the mother of all talk shows. Stay tuned. What a confluence of anniversaries it is, but I'll come to them in a minute. Andy Burnham becomes the 7th British Prime Minister in 10 years. Once upon a time, that was the Italian job. The revolving door of Italian premierships made the country a laughingstock, but they had fewer every year than we do. 7 in 10 years, and of course, unelected, as has become the traditional British way, as traditional as a bowler hat, you might say. He has organised a coup to remove the elected Prime Minister, only to promise exactly the same policies as the Prime Minister that he has replaced. What was the point of that coup, Andy, if the first person you called was Donald J. Trump, who only 5 years ago you said on Twitter yourself, anyone with any time for Donald Trump is looking like a chump this day. Well, you were right then, and you're wrong now. But what was that first phone call of your premiership about? It was to promise Donald Trump the right to fly defensive strikes of American bombers from English airfields. What a defensive strike, by the way. And when those bombers are the very heaviest of American bombers, you can do that on their civilian infrastructure targets the kind that were positively identified as right at the end of the Second World War. Those bombers are nuclear capable, and it may very well be that this Pickaxe Mountain becomes the site of the first nuclear attack since Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and it will have turned out that it was launched from an English airfield under the Labour Prime Minister Andy Burnham. Well, he will burn them, but the Iranians will burn them back. The Iranians will burn everybody back. And Andy Burnham may be the last of our prime ministers, because Great Britain may no longer exist. It's as serious as that, because the second call that Andy Burnham made, now, first one to Donald Trump, the second call that Andy Burnham made was to Volodymyr Zelensky, who, as far as I know, he's never met, but who described the plight of the beleaguered dictator in Kiev as something deeply personal to him. Well, I've been looking back to see how deeply personally involved Andy Burnham has been in support of Zelensky over the last 4 years, and virtually nothing could I find. Burnham doesn't know is he certainly has. He was not drowning in his cups at the fall of Konstantinovka. He has known that there is a nuclear plant at Zaporizhzhia, which is always in danger of becoming a nuclear bomb itself, making Chernobyl, maybe he's never heard of Chernobyl either, making Chernobyl child's play by comparison. Andy Burnham knows nothing about foreign affairs. That's why in 2015, now I've known him for 25 years, in 2015 he declared himself to be a member of the Labour Friends of Israel. He hadn't thought it worth becoming in the first 15 years that he was hanging around the British House of Commons while I was there. But in 2015, he joined the Labour Friends of Israel. Why? Because he was about to run to become leader of the Labour Party. He's finally made it. Third time lucky. How's that for opportunism? He discovered he was a friend of Israel just before he launched his leadership campaign. It was bad timing, though, because the winner was somebody called Jeremy Corbyn, who ran on a pro-Palestine ticket in the wake of the atrocities of the 2014 war on Gaza, when everyone was swinging towards Palestine, and he knew that it was in his best interests in the long term to join the Labour Friends of Israel. And infamously, during that leadership election campaign, he declared that if elected leader of the Labour Party, the first foreign visit that he would make would be to Israel. So, Andy's not really a man of the world. Well, fair play. If that means he's going to concentrate on the home front, nobody will be happier than me and my party, the Workers' Party of Britain. We do what it says on the tin, which is the best for the working people of our own country, which doesn't include handing over billions, hand over fist, to the little crook of Kiev, the little thief of Kiev, whose country was a byword for corruption before he even became the president, when he was still a ballet dancer playing the piano with his penis, with some difficulty, I understand. The little thief of Kiev can look forward to exactly the same largesse from the British taxpayer, says Andy Burnham, in which case, how are we going to pay for the cost of living crisis that Andy Burnham has promised to get to grips with? How are we going to pay for the reindustrialization of our deindustrialized country? How are we going to pay for an increase in the personal tax allowance? Oh no, that was yesterday. Burnham said he was going to raise the personal individual tax allowance. Today he's told Politico that actually, after all, what he said yesterday is no longer valid. He won't be doing it. But how is he going to pay for the crisis in social care in my country, the crisis in the National Health Service, the crisis in the living standards of the working class? How, when he's giving money to Zelensky? Well, the answer to that is that Zelensky will get his money and the rest of the people of Britain will get nout. Well, not quite nout. His first announcement was that he was going to cut the VAT on domestic energy costs. Great, I thought. Exactly what's needed in the middle of a heat wave. Exactly what's needed when you took your party, your government, took the winter fuel allowance from Britain's old age pensioners as a first act of Keir Starmer's premiership, who the next day gave precisely the same amount of money saved by the former to Zelensky. And Zelensky later was promised 100 years of £3 billion per year. Well, in the call to Zelensky, Andy Burnham told him, it's deeply personal for me. You can be sure that nothing will change in Britain's policy towards Ukraine. And as I say, what was the point then? If we're going to do exactly what Keir Starmer was doing, what's the reason for overthrowing an elected Prime Minister and replacing him with an unelected one? Even though that has become the British way. But turning to the confluence of anniversaries. In Warsaw on this day, in Paris on this day, the trains began leaving from Jewish ghetto in Warsaw and from the captive Jews in Paris, sent east to Treblinka and other death camps, where on arrival, on selection, meaning everybody over 45 was sent one way to the gas chambers, being told they were going for a shower after their long journey, and those under 45 were sent a different way to be tattooed and set to work as slave labor. On that very day, Donald Trump has been announcing hourly on Truth Social, on social media, blatant, brazen threats of war crimes of exactly the kind that were outlawed in the Nuremberg Tribunal. It is a war crime, ipso facto, with no argument, to bomb people's electricity, to bomb people's water, to bomb bridges used for civilians to go about their daily life. It is ipso facto a war crime punishable according to the Nuremberg Tribunal by the death penalty, by being hanged by the noose until you are dead. Donald Trump is hourly promising that very fate to the 93 million people of Iran on the day that the people of Minab began to bury not their children. I'm sorry to put it this way. I hope Professor Marandi isn't listening. Bury not their children. Bury the fragments of their children. Bury the skin and the nails of their children. Bury the parts of them identified only by DNA, for no other identification was possible. I just saw an interview with a woman whose son, I can hardly say it, whose son's flesh was identified sticking to the missile, the American cruise missile. He was her son when he went to school that morning. He was flesh sticking to a missile by the lunch period. And this animal, Trump, continues to threaten and to execute blatant war crimes against, for what? For Israel. That's Iran's big crime. Its big crime is that it alone has never forgotten Gaza. It alone has never abandoned the Palestinian people. It alone will never accept the European settler apartheid state that they call Israel, about which I now turn. It is the 80th anniversary of the largest and most successful terrorist attack upon the British government in the King David Hotel in Jerusalem, when, dressed as Arabs, of course by way of deception, they make war then and now, a group led by the future Prime Minister of Israel, Menachem Begin, blew up the British headquarters in Jerusalem, killing 92 of our people. Was reminded of that anniversary today. It's auspicious. No, 80 years ago, modern Tony is in New York on the ceasefire. Go ahead, Tony.
Okay, well, first of all, I want to say that I've been listening to you since the 90s in WBAI. That was also the mother of all talk shows.
Wow.
And
it was.
Yeah, so I'm 54 now, and I was in my 20s as a political science major at Montclair State University. And, you know, I would listen to BAI, and I'm totally enthralled with your perspective, and now even more. So my question is this.
Thank you, brother.
What would Comandante Fidel Castro say about Gaza right now if he was alive?
Well, I'll tell you, I did have a conversation with a dear friend of ours, Alicia Castro, former Argentine ambassador to London, and prior to that, an Argentine MP. Prior to that, the Argentine ambassador to Venezuela. And we talked not about what Fidel would have done. I'll tell you what he did in southern Africa. He sent 55,000 Cuban volunteer soldiers to go and fight apartheid and smash it, defeat it, fundamentally kill it in Quito, Cuanavale, in the great battle in Angola. And 10,000 Cuban volunteers left their bones in the African soil, which is not irrelevant to the point I'm about to make. Alicia was making the point, she knew Hugo Chavez so very well, that Hugo Chavez would have had a real problem with the last 15 months because he was a man who felt that he had to do things, omniscience. He felt that he had to be present in such monumentous crises as that. And she thought that Comandante Hugo Chavez definitely would have gone to Gaza. He would have put himself in Gaza, in the middle of all this horror, because he would not mentally, psychologically have been able to bear the shame of not doing so, of merely talking from the sidelines, merely condemning. He would have preferred to go there and die there. That's the kind of man that Comandante Hugo Chavez was, and the kind of man that Comandante Fidel Castro was too.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Let's go to Paul in North Dakota on the attack in Ireland. Paul, welcome.
I have a difference with you, George. It's regarding the events in Ireland. Now, you have been an adamant supporter of, I'll call it the wholesale invasion of England by Mohammedans and others. And it doesn't work, George. And I'll use this analogy, is not perfect, but if you have a zoo, and I'm not in support of zoos, you don't take hyenas and mix them with impalas. You don't take snakes and mix them with rabbits. You're just asking for troubles. Now, if you bring in individuals from different backgrounds...
they're all... let me stop your fascist rant right there, dead in its tracks. Hyenas and impalas are different species. Humans are all one species. People of another nationality to a hyena. Because I'll remind you, Mr. North Dakota, you're only in North Dakota because you arrived as a settler and massacred the original people of North Dakota. You racist think. My grandparents came to Britain from Ireland. Not to make Britain poorer, not to make themselves poorer, not to live on benefits. For benefits, there were none. They came from Ireland to Scotland so that they could work from 6 in the morning till 6 at night for 10 shillings and 9 pence. The people who are in our country have come here to make a better life for themselves and their families. A bit like how your forefathers did in North Dakota. Now piss off. You're not welcome. And I don't want you listening to this show any longer. Consider yourself banned.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
What a great show this is! I listened to it, I thought, wow, what a great show. I've called into your show today, George, because I'm a great caller, probably the greatest caller you've ever had. I really am. The only way your show could be better is if it had more of me, Donald J. Trump, in it. You keep talking about me, George. You do. I've heard it. I have. So many of the American people, the best people, listen to your show. And I've heard them crying about me. I have. And I listen and I go, ooh, America, don't cry. Don't cry. You need to be careful what you say about me, George. You don't want me to put a tariff on your show like I did with China. And then you'll come running for my help, just like little Zelensky. You know, I know you will. I know these things. Make the mother of all talk shows great again. That's why we're here. That's what we're gonna do, George. We're gonna boost your ratings. Donald is gonna boost them bigly. I'm giving your show the Trump bump. You're welcome, George. Thank me. And remember, nobody talks like me. Nobody calls like me. And absolutely nobody ends a phone call like me. I'm hanging up now. Not because I finished, but because I won.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Yeah. I'm not going to try and recreate the monologue that I was just in the middle of. So I'm going to see if Professor Marandi is available. He's our chief guest this evening, Professor of English Literature and Orientalism at the University of Tehran. I have no idea what happened in that technical hitch, but I ask you to forgive us for our shortcomings. Still on the road, still in China, and still trying to do our best. So here's the poll for the evening. Has the world turned its back on Gaza? Well, 25,000 people have voted already. And overwhelmingly, they believe, yes, you can vote on my
You just speak.
/ George Galloway on my X on the YouTube community.
Okay, apparently there's been a coup, and I've taken over George's show, and so they've asked me to speak a bit until their technical issues are resolved. I'm guessing that George will ask about current events, and therefore probably it has to do with Iran and the ongoing war with the United States. I don't think he was going to ask about the World Cup, which did go well for the Palestinian people. At least that was some good news. But my my guess is he'll say, well, he'll ask, what is the current situation? My opinion, we are heading towards the most decisive and dangerous part of the war. 40 days, the United States launched an illegal and illicit war with the Netanyahu regime. And with the full complicity of Qatar, Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, Kuwait, and Bahrain, and Jordan. They were all a part of this coalition, and no one helped Iran. Many tilted towards the West, but no one tilted towards Iran. It was just the Iranians and the axis of resistance. Then the United States failed. So we had a siege. The Americans imposed a siege. They lost that too. That's why they had to sign the MOU. The Iranians signed the MOU because it was favorable to them, even though they knew that the United States was lying and that the United States had brought in extra equipment for another war, including a possible land invasion. But the Iranians used the MOU, even though they knew, as they said, the Americans would not abide by their commitments, to prepare themselves. So they exported tens of millions of barrels of oil that was stuck in the Persian Gulf, tankers full of oil, and they imported necessary goods, and they prepared themselves militarily. The United States began to violate the MOU. They refused to tell the Israelis to leave Lebanon, to stop the murders, the bombings, and they refused to hand over Iran's stolen assets. And then they tried to take over the Strait of Hormuz, undermine Iran's authority that was agreed upon in the MOU, Article 5. And now we are where we are. The United States launched another phase of the war. But now Trump is talking about destroying Iran's infrastructure. And the Iranians have said very openly, very clearly, that they will destroy the critical infrastructure of all those regimes that are complicit in this war. So Iran will not allow any ships to leave the Strait of Hormuz unless they have the Iranian. If the Saudis and the Qataris and Emiratis send a ship to leave, the Iranians will strike it because they do not have the approval. That was an agreement. That was an agreement in the agreement between Iran and the United States. Iran would determine how ships would cross through the Strait of Hormuz. They would regulate trade. So we are where we are now. If a ship comes, Iran will hit it. Then Trump will have to make a decision. Does he want to bomb bridges and power plants? If he does that, Iran bomb power plants and other critical infrastructure in the regimes of the Persian Gulf. What is the difference between Iran and these regimes? The Iranians are a country of 90-some million. They have power plants spread out throughout the country. They are self-sufficient when it comes to agriculture. It's mountainous, there are rivers, there's water reservoirs. Iran, only 1% of the Iranian population uses desalination plants for their water. So, and also Iran, since it's been under sanctions for decades, Iran's oil and gas assets are limited. The other side of the Persian Gulf, the West has helped expand all of their assets. So if they strike Iran, Iran will strike back. When it strikes back, these countries will collapse. They will fall apart. People will have to leave. They will abandon the countries, whether it's Qatar or the Emirates, whether it's Saudi Arabia or Kuwait, and perhaps even Oman and Bahrain. So when that happens, that will be the end of these countries. And that will be the end of the oil and gas industry in these countries for the next couple of years, at least, perhaps much longer. And then even then, it won't be clear who will be in charge of this land. Perhaps Iraq will take over Kuwait. Perhaps Bahrain will return to Iran. Perhaps there'll be internal strife in Saudi Arabia and the Emirates, elsewhere, these desert lands. But it won't be what it was before. And that will immediately lead to a global economic meltdown. So if Trump pushes the war in the direction that he has threatened to do, have no doubt, no one should have any doubt whatsoever, Iran will be decisive in its response. And the world will change. So the Saudis have to make a decision. Are they going to allow this to happen? The Emiratis, the Kuwaitis, because Iran will do it. Iran did not start this war. Iran did not bring about escalation. Iran signed an MOU, the other side violated it, with the support of the Saudis, the Kuwaitis, and the Emiratis. It was their ships that violated Article 5 under their authority to help undermine Article 5 of the MOU. So Iran is not indebted to anyone. This is deterrence. If the United States does not do it, of course Iran is not going to do it. Iran is always careful about civilian targets. Now, why is Trump making this threat? Because he's desperate and because he's angry. Because the Iranians have destroyed U.S. bases across the Persian Gulf region. The Americans retreated to Saudi Arabia, west of Saudi Arabia and Jordan, and now the Iranians are hammering the bases there. Precision missiles, and the Americans are desperate. The casualties are much higher than what the Americans are admitting, according to Iranian sources, according to people in the know. And the damage done to American infrastructure is enormous, whereas all Iran's key assets are underground. That's why the United States wants to bomb Iranian critical infrastructure, because they cannot bomb Iran's military assets. And so Iran has no choice. In order to protect its people, it will have to destroy the infrastructure of those countries that are helping with the aggressor. And by the way, those American troops that are based in those countries, when they have no more electricity or water, the Arabian Peninsula is like 50 degrees Celsius in July, August, and September. American soldiers will all have to leave. Everyone will have to leave. So hopefully the United States will not be foolish enough to obey the Zionists, because there's no doubt that this is the doing of the Zionists. This is not in the interest of the American people. It's not in the interest of the people of the world. Those who are pushing for this war are the Zionists. What do they have on Trump? Who knows? But Trump is pushing the world towards a very, very dangerous place. In my opinion, it will be a Great Depression. There will be a Great Depression worse than the 1930s. Okay, George, the coup has failed and you're back.
Donald Trump will be meeting Benjamin Netanyahu for the 6th time this year, and it isn't even August. And one can only imagine that Netanyahu will be pushing him to accelerate, to intensify the aggression against Iran, perhaps even for Israel to join it. Though Smotrich said today that the current situation with the United States fighting Iran alone is the best situation for them. And I've no doubt that that's true, but it's not an election-winning card for Netanyahu. So we'll have to await developments on that. One development that we will not be seeing is the arrest of Netanyahu when he comes to New York City. Fair play to the mayor of New York for expressing his wish to, willingness to, arrest the war criminal. But Trump has made clear that there would literally be a shootout at the OK Corral if the New York City Police Department were to try that. And so we're going to be treated, it seems, to Netanyahu lecturing the world about terrorism. When terrorism brought his state into being, not least against the British civil service and the British armed forces, trying to fulfill their mandate given to them by the United Nations, will be treated to the whole 9 yards. Are they winning the argument in the United States, in the world, do you think?
The world despises the Israeli regime and is growing by the day, literally growing by the day, George, and becoming increasingly entrenched. So the Netanyahu going to the United States is only going to make things look worse for the Israeli regime. It's only going to make things look worse for Trump, because the escalation that we're seeing and that many expect to take place is going to drive energy prices through the roof. And people will blame Trump and Netanyahu. They will blame Zionism and Israel. They'll put two and two together. So they can talk all they want, but the image is catastrophic for the United States. And of course, the genocide in Gaza is ongoing. Every day they're slaughtering people. Just yesterday, they burned a family alive. They slaughter kids on a daily basis. People are seeing this. It's getting through. Western media won't show it. If you read Western media outlets, you would have no idea that there's daily slaughter in Gaza. Why? Because they're owned by the Epstein class. Because they have zero credibility. Their journalists have zero credibility. They may have 5 times as many followers as me, or 2 times as many followers as you, but they are worthless in the eyes of ordinary people who are seeing the truth in one way or another. So this is all, and all the moves that they make are only going to hurt themselves, because there's a war going on and people are seeing it, and people are seeing the price of oil right now going up. And in the coming days, if Trump follows through on his threat, price of oil will go through the roof, and so will other commodities. And then we'll see the collapse, and people will know what brought that about. There wasn't a need for war. There was an MOU. Everything could have been resolved, but Israel wouldn't have it. And by the way, George, the Israeli regime says this is the best scenario for us, that the U.S. and the Iranians are fighting this way. First of all, that shows that the Israeli regime has no regard for the American people. They use the United States to do their dirty work for them. But this is not at all good for the regime. First of all, the defeat for the United States and the victory for Iran in the Strait of Hormuz is very bad news for them. But second of all, Iran is destroying all those layers of defenses that the United States has created for Israel. All those radar systems that have been designed in northern Iraq, in the Persian Gulf region, in Jordan, to the west of Saudi Arabia. All of these that have been designed to protect the Israeli regime from Iranian missiles and drones as well, particularly drones. They're gone. They're being destroyed. So, and right now the Iranians, they're waiting. They're focusing on the Strait of Hormuz, but they're also watching the internal situation in the Israeli regime, which is pretty bad. And the internal situation is very bad. And the Iranians are just watching. They don't think that right now is the time for Iran to strike, because it will possibly help Netanyahu. Let them fight. But if they hit Iran, they no longer have the protection or the semi-protection that they had before. Iran will hit them very, very hard. So the Israeli regime again
the price, you were talking there, Professor, about the oil price. The Brent crude price is well over $90 a barrel now, and that's the paper price. That's paper oil.
That's right.
Everyone now knows, I think, the difference between paper gold and real gold. Well, paper oil and the real oil price are just as distinctly different. I spoke to a businessman who should know just the other night And he says that you will actually have to pay closer to $150. And that's before any sharp deterioration caused by the events. So, I mean, eventually no one will be buying oil at all because no one will be able to afford to. And that 1930s style depression that you've been predicting, you can see it coming down the pipeline, if you'll forgive the pun.
Oh, absolutely, George. And you know, when I was listening to one of your phone conversations, obviously recorded from the past, where someone was saying these Muslims shouldn't come into our country. Well, I mean, to the racists, I would say that when your governments help bring down the global economy, tens of millions of people won't be on the move. Tens of millions of people will be on. Perhaps hundreds of people, millions of people will be on the move. We will be living in a very different world, George. It will be a very it will be a terrible situation. I mean, it is not something that I can really comprehend. When I think about what could happen, it's just beyond my imagination. But the United States is pushing us in that direction. And as you rightly said, when the price of oil goes through the roof, it will quickly reach a price where no one can pay. That's when all the factories shut down. That's when all the businesses shut down. That's when the electricity goes out. That's when the public services go down. That's when the internet starts to go down. We will live in a very different place. I hope we don't go there, but we are dealing with a psychopath in the White House, surrounded by Zionist firsters, Israeli firsters, who don't care about the United States, who don't care about Europeans, who don't care about the rest of the world, obviously. So it is a very dangerous situation. I'm sure there are people in the Pentagon and in politics in the United States who are fearful of what will happen because they know that all their calculations regarding Iran have turned out to be wrong. Last year's war was supposed to be a piece of cake. They failed. Then this year they went and brought in everything they had. They said unconditional surrender. They failed. Then they thought they'd destroy Iran with siege warfare. Again, they failed. Now they're coming back for more. But now the global economy has reached that tipping point. And the threats that Trump is making will be dealt with by the Iranians very decisively. So the situation now is different from 3-4 months ago. We've reached a turning point. Either things go south very fast, or they go south, but to a lesser degree. Things are going south anyway for the world economy. There's no doubt about that. But if Trump carries out his threats, then we go south very fast.
The apocalypse that you describe, and I share your analysis, but it is an apocalypse that you describe, cannot have escaped the notice of the clever people. There must be clever people in the United States, in the security state, if not in the Congress, then in the establishment, amongst the business people. They must know that we're reaching an existential. I mean, famously said, one of the most significant things he said recently was, we know that this might bring about the end of the world, but for us, there is no point in the world without Russia. Iran is now in the same state of mind, isn't it? That if they are going to destroy Iran, then Iran will destroy everything and everybody.
Well, Iran doesn't want to destroy everything and everybody, but these regimes are complicit. these regimes are all waging war against Iran. So if Kuwait, when the Americans are using Kuwait to strike Iran and to strike Iranian bridges and power plants and desalination plants, then Iran will not initiate any strikes, but it will ultimately retaliate. If the same thing happens with Saudi Arabia or Qatar, all of them are complicit in this war. Even Oman is. All of them are complicit. So they're at war with Iran. It's not just the United States. These countries are at war with Iran too, these regimes. So Iran has no option but to hit back at them. Iran does not want to hit back at countries that have had nothing to do with Iran or have not carried out aggression against Iran. Iran is not going to strike Central Asian critical installations. They're going to carry it out. They're going to strike the installations of those countries that are busy killing Iranian children, that want to destroy the infrastructure so that hospitals in Iran will not have electricity. And Iran has warned them again and again and again. So Iran does not initiate conflict. Iran does not initiate escalation. But at some point, it has to create deterrence. Right now, as the Americans have been striking Iranian bridges and tunnels, all civilian, the Iranians have been hitting back at U.S. military bases. And then when they did it a few times, Iran said, we will hit back at critical infrastructure. And the Americans stopped for 2-3 days. But now Trump is saying he's raising the stakes, as they say. And the Iranians are not going to pull back.
Yes.
The Iranians are going to hit back very hard. And we see Iran's capabilities, George. What we are witnessing today shows a much stronger Iran than even the 40-day war. Iranian missiles are very precise, more precise than they were 3-4 months ago. I don't know what new technologies they're using, what changes that they've made, but they're hitting the Americans very hard. And that's why Trump is so angry. That's why he's making these threats, because he knows he's losing the war. So we are where we are. And I pray that for the safety of everyone across the world, but ultimately the decision will be made in Washington. And it will be them who we will all blame.
Well, they've abandoned now. They've abandoned the Al Ubaid base. They've abandoned the King Faisal base in Prince Faisal base in Jordan. They have effectively closed their Persian Gulf presence, with the exception of Kuwait and Bahrain, though there can't be much left of their presence in Bahrain. They're basically running this war now from the far west, from Jordan and Israel. But finally, and I'm grateful for your time, and you may have covered this in the moments that I was temporarily off air. If so, forgive me. But we are now talking about a double whammy, aren't we? Saudi Arabia is now effectively itself under siege as a result of the decisions made by the people of Yemen to effectively enter the war, to make a complete logjam of the Straits of Minab in their case, and in Hormuz in your case. So fully 25% of oil and gas, 1/4 of the global, will shortly not be available at all. What significance do you attach to this? And what can the Saudis do about it?
The Saudis can't do anything, and they brought this upon themselves. They in the West, and all these regimes in the region, they imposed a war on Yemen for years, a genocidal war very similar to Gaza. And all the countries in the region were behind them. Qatar, Jordan, Turkey, the Emirates, all of them were together until Saudi Arabia and the Emirates turned against Qatar, and then Qatar tilted away, and so did Turkey because they're allies. So they imposed a genocidal war on Yemen. They, with the Americans, prevented food from getting in, prevented medicine from getting in. And now Yemen is saying enough is enough. And then the Saudis made the catastrophic and foolish decision to strike the Yemeni International Airport, the Sana'a International Airport. Some say they were pushed to do so by the Americans. And that was the straw that broke the camel's back. Iran had sent a flight there to pick up a delegation for the funeral. Then when they went back, on the way back, as they neared the airport, the Saudis bombed it. That was outrageous to Iran because this was a civilian airliner. It was an airplane. The crew were all ordinary civilians, men and women. And some of the people on the plane, I knew them. I met them in Tehran. So the plane was in danger, and this was an act of war against the people of Yemen too. So now Yemen has imposed a siege on Saudi ports in the Red Sea, and that is going to drive the price of oil higher. So the Americans have now created a situation where it's Iran and Yemen. They already lost to Yemen once. They're losing to Iran again and again and again. And then the Iraqi resistance is prepared for war. And their numbers are greater than that of Hezbollah and all their reserves. And they have easy access to the best weapons available. So how is Saudi Arabia going to win? All Yemen has to do is destroy Saudi oil infrastructure, as they once did to bring about the ceasefire a few years ago. So Saudi Arabia is in no position to fight. The regimes in the Persian Gulf are in no position to fight. If there are strikes on their critical infrastructure, they'll all collapse. And Trump will be left with nothing but an economy that will collapse before the eyes of the American people. So I'm quite stunned, actually, that the Saudis bombed Sana'a International Airport, because the timing couldn't be worse for the regime, for the Saudi regime.
Indeed, you must have raised an eyebrow, if not a wry smile, which uranium that they could develop a nuclear program. All the reasons that we are in this cataclysmic war against Iran to try and stop. Are they serious about that? What would Iran's attitude to that be?
I couldn't hear you, George. The connection is not very good. But if I understood correctly, the Saudis have received permission for the Americans to enrich uranium. The Iranians have been for years telling the Saudis that we will help you enrich uranium. We will give you the technology. Because Iran does not wait for the Americans to give them permission for anything. So the Saudis, instead of accepting Iran's offer, they waited and waited for years until the Americans gave them permission. That is a humiliation. Saudi Arabia is an independent country. But just one final note, George, that is somewhat linked to this. Now the Americans are talking about striking Iran again, and they're saying that they want to strike Iran's nuclear program. They just said last year, Trump said it tens of times, that they had obliterated Iran's nuclear program. They had completely destroyed it. But now they're saying it's completely active, everything is intact, they're enriching uranium. What is it? Which one is it? So a segment of American society, the MAGA cult, they will believe this nonsense. Either they were lying back then or they're lying now. But they will believe it. But everyone else sees through their utter dishonesty.
Yeah, well, they do. Lies are Donald Trump's middle name, and Rubio's too. I always thank you effusively, Professor, and always mean it, but I mean it even more this evening for putting up with the very difficult technical conditions. We are not in the mountains of Yemen. We are actually in Silicon Valley in China. It's not the best advertisement for it, I'll grant you. Thank you very much indeed. Professor Seyed Marandi, Professor of English Literature and Orientalism at the University of Tehran. Let me take a quick break and then it's on with the show, Silicon Valley, my ass. Be right back. We have to rage against the dying of this light. Many of you, I know you're saying it already, there was never much light, that England was not the green and pleasant land you are making it out to be, and we never were free and we never were a democratic country and so on. Of course I hear and recognize all of these points of view, but I grew up in what turned out to be a brief moment of social democracy in this country. It didn't go far enough, but it is an incomparable land to the land that we live in today, of brand new council houses, with your father working in a factory at the end of the road that the government had forced the company to redirect to, with a health centre at the other end of the road where you got free milk, orange juice, malt, a free NHS if you were clever enough, free university, completely free, and an era of free speech. Of course, the television was owned by just a few oligarchs, and if you didn't cut the mustard with them, you would never be seen on television. But nobody would ever dream of telling you that you were under arrest because of a placard that you held up. Nobody would ever dream that 90-year-old ladies, that blind men in wheelchairs, that 80-year-olds in their scores, maybe hundreds, would end up on terrorism charges in Britain for expressing support on a piece of cardboard for an organization of peaceful, non-violent, civil disobedience people.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Big apologies for the technical problems this evening. I have no idea why. It is the middle of the night, but in Silicon Valley, the internet should still work. It's Declan in Dublin, a legend of the show. He wants to talk about Syria. As if we didn't have enough to deal with, we've also got Syria. Declan, welcome.
Well, these people don't stop. The two issues I want to briefly mention to you are the ongoing torture of the former Grand Mufti. He's on trial in parentheses at the moment in Damascus, dressed up in central casting prison uniform. The Syrian media are showing the backs of the prosecution witnesses who are giving evidence against them, so-called evidence against them. They won't even show their faces. The three people who are brave enough, very brave enough to speak for him, they don't get a mention at all. It's a NATO ISIS kangaroo court, and I just hope Judge Napolitano is listening at the moment for when the chance comes to highlight this and other cases. A related thing is the British media, and honestly, even thinking of the British-Irish media makes me physically sick. they won't stop against Asma Assad, right? She, according to these journalists in parentheses, is the biggest gangster in history, bigger than Al Capone or anybody else. Now, the woman is on death's bed. She's been battling cancer caused by the stress of these people in parentheses who invaded Syria. She's had cancer for about 10 years, very, very sick. And what they have to do, what these people and their NATO bosses have to do, is pull down everything so that no two pebbles stand on top of each other, so that Syria is only a marketplace for junk food and by cut price wives. The kidnapping and raping of Alawites is going on wholesale. It's barely worth mentioning. But these people are on the rocks, and I just hope by taking a minute or two of your program with Judge Napolitano there in the background, that Amnesty International and the whole MI6 crew in the Four Seasons Hotel in Damascus will get their day in court too. That's all I want to say, George.
One day, God willing, one day they will. Of course, Syria does still have one use for the empire, and that is to turn Al-Qaeda and ISIS to the south, to invade Lebanon and create a civil war in Lebanon, which Donald Trump again today has threatened to do. Thank you very much, Declan. Now you can leave comments on YouTube. Just scan that QR code, leave a comment, I'll try and read it out. Rob Shepherd says, strange how the live stream gets interrupted when you're telling truths about Israel. Well, I've got to think it's only a coincidence as I'm in China. CJ says, thank you for saving the show, Professor Marandi. Exactly what I just did. Kieran Allen says, I love this man here. He's a Muslim fighting for Muslim rights in a Muslim country. And Rick Paquette, 1611, sends $20. Thank you very much, Rick. Says, after Gaza, there are no longer war crimes in the 2020s. Karaoke Stars, 5064, says, Trump as Netanyahu is guilty of crimes against humanity and must be held to account. These men are killing innocent people for no other reason than power. They need us. We do not require them. And Tam McIntosh says, congratulations, Lindsey Graham. 9 days without any AIPAC money. Let me see if there is more. Yeah, I've got a call. Dennis in New York. Go ahead, Den.
George, I'm glad we got the technical stuff sorted out. Can you hear me?
I can, yeah, go ahead.
Thank you for taking my call. I'll be as brief as I can. I'd like to start with just a reminder of a couple of the recurring themes that we've had in our conversations over the last few years. I think the first words I ever said to you the first time I called were, there are limitations to rational discourse, and I reiterated that several times over the years. Another notable point was my expression of my belief that nothing good will ever come of anything that Donald Trump ever says or does, and we can forget about any realistic expectation of anything good ever coming from him. Moving on, the last time we talked, I made a mention of the periodic emergence of powerful voices of reason that emerge periodically through human history to articulate the collective voice and the plight of a people. And I'd like to mention a few of those just as an example. Certainly JFK, Martin Luther King, Hassan Nasrallah, any number of them, and most notably for this conversation, is the Archbishop Desmond Tutu, who might not be credited as widely as some of the others, but who I believe was a powerful voice of reason and of justice. I'm sure you would agree. And the reason I bring him up is because I'm not a theologian, but I have studied a little bit, and I now understand that Desmond Tutu was informed. He was born into the Christian faith, but he was informed by a body of theology called African theology that started to develop 2,000 years ago. And most people would be interested to know, as I have just come to understand, that among the greatest Christian theologians that ever lived were the likes of Augustine, who is credited with, by most people, with being the greatest Christian theologian that ever lived, who happened to be a Berber from North Africa, who lived in Alexandria, Egypt. And second to him, Cyprian of Carthage, who was also a Berber. The reason I bring them up is because it was they who began the process of integrating Christian theology with African precepts, most importantly, one known as Ubuntu. And Desmond Tutu was adept at this, articulating the intersection of Christian theology and Ubuntu. And I believe that that's where he got his power and his influence, because he was able to organize people in a way on a very deep spiritual level, not just politics. So the final note of all of this is that when I spoke the last time we called about the emergence of a powerful voice of reason, something came to me the other day when I was reading about the publication of the Chinese, the latest and greatest Chinese iteration of artificial intelligence called Kimi K3. And it dawned on me that there is, at least I think, the prospect of an artificial intelligent project designed to study the all of the precepts of the ancient religions in the world: Taoism, India, the Upanishads, Christianity, Islam, Ubuntu from Africa, and organize a body of thought, an artificially intelligent, an AI-generated body of thought that would integrate all of these precepts in such a way that a group of people could then begin to internalize, synthesize, and articulate this collective wisdom that the world has, and the power of AI to organize this this body of thought, I think, is unprecedented and unique in human history. And I hope it's not too harebrained.
Indeed so, and you've expressed it very powerfully, Dennis. In fact, you've done two things in the course of this latest of your contributions. First of all, you've educated everyone across the world about the continued existence of very fine and very intelligent and civilized people in the United States. And that's important because the face of the United States that is currently on view across the world is so revoltingly ugly and base that it is a useful reminder that you have just made, that the United States has many, many fine, outstanding people of great intellect, education, and nobility of heart and mind. The second thing you've done is demonstrate just how smart the average viewer of the mother of all talk shows is. The caliber of your discourse only found on television anywhere in the world. I knew Archbishop Desmond Tutu. I am on a speaking tour of South Africa in September, from the 16th of September, which for me is a return because, as you will know, but not everyone will know, during the apartheid era, I was an underground operative for the African National Congress, led by Nelson Mandela in prison, Oliver Tambo at large, and the United Democratic Movement, of which Archbishop Tutu became such a totemic, emblematic figure. So if you're listening in South Africa, do make an appointment to see me. We'll be publishing the dates and places of these speaking engagements and how you can get tickets just as soon as we are able. As to the AI point that you made, I thought it a splendid idea. If I meet the founder of Kimi, which I may very well do, I'll make your point to him. He's a man that has beaten the pants off all competitors and who has decided that Kimi, which is now officially the best AI platform of them, will be free for humanity, which is quite a disappointment for all those people who've invested in the shares of the profit-making concerns in the AI field in the United States and elsewhere, particularly the tech bros of American Silicon Valley, who thought that they were on to a new bonanza, a new Klondike, but have just been cut off below the knees by a Chinese man who was turned down in the United States, so far as his education was concerned, returned to China, and has changed the world. Next, let me recognize and salute the Moats donors this evening who have backed the program through the Moats.tv website, Moats.tv. They are Nigel Ellis Brown, Yosri Uni, William Fitch, James Glass, and Dennis Freeman. Remember, just to support the show, you visit Moats.tv, click the Donate Now button, and give whatever you can afford, either one-off or recurring. Let me give you the numbers again, because we've lost some callers in the technical maelstrom that tonight has been. In the US and Canada, it's +1 8550 MOAT, M-O-A-T 6287. It's free of charge in Britain and Ireland on 0800 229 4411. And the worldwide number is 0044 203 966 2625. Let's go to Paris and talk to Roy. Roy. Welcome, Roy.
G'day, George. Can you hear me?
Nice to hear from you, sir.
Talk last year.
Yeah,
last
very
time
clearly. Go ahead.
Yes, last year I was accused of being an anti-Semite because I did not agree with the war with Iran, seeing where it would get us today. Now, I don't have the same point of view of everybody in doom and gloom, because I spend a lot of nights on YouTube on George Napolitano, Sean Ryan and others on internet, and what I see is that a lot of backbone of ex-special forces in the United States are against the war in Ukraine and against the war in Iran. And I think today most of the American people, and even the French, funnily enough, are not backing these backers of Ukrainian Zelenskyism and Middle Eastern Netanyahuism. We have to go to the end. We have to go to the end of this tether. We will suffer, but I do hope it'll be for the good of greater man, giving all my hopes and pensées, as the French say, to the Palestinian people. And may I give you a little word of advice? Stop putting London as your opening theme, and maybe give opening themes of what Gaza used to look like 4 years ago and what it looks like today.
Okay, thanks, Roy. I'm glad we got on better tonight than we did the last time. Very good of you to continue watching and calling the show. I don't think we will change the normal back. It'll be back, but we're okay time. All that means is I am giving my views from a London-centric viewpoint, because I am formed by my own country. I'm the leader of a British political party. I'm a student of British history, of British working class history, British imperialist history. I'm a teacher of both of these things. Imagine, I left school at 16 to go and work in a factory, Michelin, as they say in French, and now I am lecturing at universities across China and indeed across the world. I'm essentially now a visiting professor, and that is quite a turnaround in my life. But I'm doing it all as someone formed in and made by the British labour movement tradition. But I think you'll agree, I am maybe the supreme internationalist, and I am all the time looking to shed light on events in different parts of the world. And if we can, we will, as soon as we're able, start segmenting the Moat Show. We hope to do a Moat's Asia show. If we can get the internet sorted out, we'll do a Moat's Asia every week. And I'll be on it, but so will many very prominent Asian personalities who will take turns presenting it, interviewing each other, finding guests, and so on. And that's one of the reasons why we're in China, to get that Moats Asia off the ground. It'll be on a different night from Moats 1 and Moats 2, but of course the viewers of Moats 1 and Moats 2 are definitely welcome to watch it, although it will be broadcast at an Asian-friendly time, which of course this show cannot be. It's past 3 a.m. in the morning in China right now. So some exciting developments coming your way, I hope. Now you can download the Moats podcast right now by scanning the QR code on your screen. The weekly broadcast is also available on our website at moats.tv. Do take a moment to rate the podcast. It helps us climb the charts. This week, the podcast is in the top 10 for politics in Chile, in Nigeria, Kuwait, and Uruguay, and in the top 30 for politics in South Africa, New Zealand, and Hong Kong. Thanks to everyone who watches, listens, subscribes, and shares the program. Okay, let's go to the US, Wisconsin, where Albert has a plan for peace. I'm all ears. Albert, do tell me.
Okay, hello, George. This is Albert. I'm at Butternut, Wisconsin. And this is a plan I drew up some time ago.
Okay, welcome.
And here's what it is. I title Plan for Peace. As I begin this task, I pray for divine guidance, that I may transfer my thoughts in an effective manner. As I observe this ever-intensifying move toward war, I am horrified, not only for my children and grandchildren, but for all others and their children. This concern does not end at national boundaries. It is not limited to any ethnic group, any creed or religion, to which I hold no animosity. At this time, the very existence of life is in extreme danger due to the ever-increasing possibility of nuclear war. The time to embark on a new path is long overdue. I am not here to cast blame. That will never result in peace. The path to peace is love, understanding, and forgiveness. As I look at these conflicts, my heart goes out to that family who lost a loved one in battle. I equally feel for that Russian family who lost a loved one, as well as those in Ukraine, Palestine, or Israel. And I wonder what manner of evil brought about this atrocity. We must reach out to Palestine, Russia, and all sovereign nations with outstretched hands. We must ask, how can I help you and your people? And they will respond in kind. We will collectively defeat the evil that now has a chokehold on us. We will convert this planet to a planet of Eden. There will be trials and tribulations, but we will be much better off than before. The end.
Amen. That could 60. In fact, I saw a clip of Kennedy speaking in 1953 with such wisdom and good intentions. It never came to pass, of course. It may never have done so. But we were robbed of the opportunity of finding out by the events in Dealey Plaza in November of 1963. Albert, you sound like keen a lot, but your hope has never died, and your good intentions have never faded, and I wish you all the best. Some comments on YouTube. Jack Plugman, great name. Never forget, 95% of Israelis support all of this. It's not quite 95%, but it's not a kick in the arse off it, Jack. You're right. Deba Shizdi says a lot of the world supports Iran. It was an illegal and underhand attack on Iran. I remember making that point on Piers Morgan, and he laughed. Oh, how he laughed. But the truth is, the vast majority of the people of the world support Iran in this conflict. Blue Sky says, allow the IAEA to visit Dimona. That's the place where the Israeli state developed its nuclear weapons and secretly stores them. And is it time, says soldiers who are unsafe far from Iran in Israel, Jordan, UAE, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and Oman, now want to go into Iranian? Unbelievable. Indeed, it is. And the Dark Ranger, not easy for me to say that, says the UK are bastards, allowing the US to use their airspace. Quick break then. It's your calls next, and then, shortly, it's the maestro, Judge Napolitano. Stay tuned. I'll be right back. Tommy in Glasgow is no longer in Glasgow. He's actually in the inner sanctum of the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Palestine. Go on yourself, Tommy. How did a Glasgow man get there?
How did I get there? Because you're my leader for Palestine. For years, decades, 5 decades, 50 years or more, you have been championing the cause of Palestine. You know, what you forgot about Palestine, most people don't even know, you know, but you've led people like me. You know, you helped me. Anyway, yeah, I was in there today. The first prayer, the second prayer of the day, Zohar prayer, I tried to get in there. And by the grace and will of God, do you know what happened? The Zionist pig actually pushed me. He pushed me away. He said, do you want to have a go? Thinking he was a big hard man with a big gun. Is it a Glaswegian? Yeah, I want to have a go, but I said I want to go in there. I want to go into the masjid, you muppet. Never said muppet, but I said, yeah, I want to have a go. I want to go into the masjid. And he pushed me again. And alhamdulillah, he pushed me again. But anyway, sabr, as the Arabic say, patience, have patience. There's more than one way to skin a cat. I went through another couple checkpoints. One even had the chutzpah to say to me in a funny accent, go back to the UK. Anyway, finally, alhamdulillah, with a bit of patience, sabr, persistence, I managed to get in and read my Zohar prayer, by the skin of my teeth. And what a blessed sanctuary it is. And I'm on here to try and encourage many people to come. The Christian, today I went to Bethlehem, Church of Nativity. It was a pilgrimage on behalf of my great grandfather and grandmother, may they rest in peace. And my mother, who's quite sick, and she kept saying, I wish I could be their son. And she was, because in spirit through me, being in there, and you know, these Palestinian people in the West Bank and East Jerusalem, Al-Quds, the suffering and pain and indignity they have to face on a daily basis of how they treat these beautiful people, and they are beautiful people. So my call out tonight to you, our great leader, you know, and what the show, you have decimated the industry of news, you know, the liars, and you're a bastion for truth, and your show, alhamdulillah, all praise for God, and give you strength to carry on, all the great listeners. And I said a special dua, a special supplication for you, George, for your family, for all the listeners out there, for the Muslims. If you've not been to Masjid Al-Aqsa, you need to get your finger out. It's not for Palestine, it's for the Muslim Ummah. It's for the people who are Islamic. You must go. You must go, please, for the love of God, go. Everyone go to Masjid Al-Aqsa. Everyone defend the faith. Fight against the Netanyahu, the Satanists that are out there. Defend the holy sanctuaries. Are you there, Christian? Are you there, Muslim? Stand with us. George, lead the way, brother. Alhamdulillah.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Some Patreon comments now. Patreon is a vitally important part of how we fund this show. We have a substantial number of people, but we need more who are supporting us on patreon.com. So you can either go to the website, moats.tv, make a donation, or you can make a regular donation, either there or through patreon.com/George Galloway. And our Patreon supporters are our advance guard. And David Blessing is amongst them. How beautifully named. Says, no, but the media most certainly has forgotten Gaza. This is by design, as you know. No mention of Gaza. No mention of the Board of Peace. No mention of the land stolen since the, quote, ceasefire, unquote. Just like the Epstein files, out of sight, out of mind. And John C. says, Cameron once said Gaza is the biggest open-air concentration camp in the world. He was in a position, like the rest of the world, to stop it. No one is interested. The question is why? Brilliantly put, John. Adil Muhammad says, George is our hero, and I nominate him by the people. I'm available if in exile. Thank you, Adil. Look, let's go to California, who wouldn't, where Josh is on the line on Trump's strategy. Go ahead, Josh.
Yes, hi, George. People have a tendency to characterize Donald Trump as someone who is trying to prey on or take advantage of someone smaller than him because they have something that he wants. But the truth is a little bit more complicated than that. You know, Trump has announced his intention to end forever wars. And when he says this, he means both the war on terror and the long-standing post-war bloc conflict that has given rise to all of these kind of pustular conflicts along the border of Russia and China, inclusive of the quote-unquote war on terror, the result of the resistance to the occupation. Now, one thing you have to know about Trump is he has something. He's the one who has something that everyone wants. He has control of the 1967 borders. But in order to achieve the restoration of the 1967 borders, two things need to happen. One, the cellular, semi-autonomous guerrilla brigade phase of the resistance to the occupation has to draw to a close. Just like they've done in Syria, where Mohammed al-Shara's organization has been de-designated and they have formed a national unity government, this is the expectation of Hamas, this is the expectation of Hezbollah, this is the expectation that in the age where state-on-state violence is now acceptable where it regards the Zionist state, the necessity to have these semi-autonomous groups that are able to operate at least somewhat independently of any states or state agendas to which they are aligned is no longer necessary. That era of performative, if educational violence has ended. The issue is firmly in the forefront of people's thoughts. But arguably more importantly, de-escalation with the two other superpowers, and there are only three, does not come as other nations are trying to raise the nuclear floor. The superpowers have a military strategy that is escalatory and is dominant and requires parity, and their strategy against one another is to gradually escalate from war crimes to crimes against humanity to genocide, inclusive of nuclear genocide. And this same strategy has to apply to any of the countries that are seeking to raise the nuclear floor, making it impossible to lower the nuclear ceiling, making it impossible to de-escalate with the United States' primary rivals, Russia and China. And, of course, this strategy is the reason why the superpowers are not signatories to the Rome Statute, because the explicit strategies of superpowers in a nuclear world is very much definitively illegal under the Rome Statute. So unless we can achieve the transition from non-state actors to state actors where it regards the resistance to the occupation of the Holy Land, and we can establish a denuclearization regime that has to come from the bottom up before it can come from the top down, there's absolutely no way to effect peace. And although the 67 borders is the prize, everyone has to learn how to play the game. And unfortunately, because we live in a world where everybody in every country is incidental as it relates to the conflict between the superpowers, the game is Trump's game, and the game is Putin's game, the game is Xi Jinping's game. So until people begin to play the game as it is, they're going to perpetuate a phase of the resistance to imperialism that is drawing to a close.
Well, I may be a visiting professor, Josh, but I'm not smart enough to understand the logic that you were arguing there. Much of it sounded like bollocks, I must tell you. And I really cannot understand how you can describe imperialism drawing to a close to be the condition that we're in. The state we're in is one of heightened imperialism. The stage we're in is the American empire seeking to defend its hegemony established from the end of the Soviet Union, the destruction of the Soviet Union, and a total unwillingness for the colonial state of Israel to disgorge that which it has illegally swallowed. The issue is not the 1967 borders. What planet are you living on? The 1967 borders cannot be restored. They have been completely obliterated. They've been obliterated by millions of tons of concrete of the Israeli settlements that now infest virtually the entirety of the West Bank. Have you seen Hebron? Have you seen these Harries running around with American weapons, paid by the American taxpayer, calling themselves Israeli settlers, terrorizing people, uprooting olive trees, killing farmers, killing people, battering people? Have you seen them? One of your own top political representatives, Ro Khanna, fell victim to them just the other week. And the idea that imperialism is on the wane, and that non-state resistors to imperialism should demobilize, should disarm themselves, is completely ridiculous. And for you to pray in aid Donald Trump's installation of ISIS and Al-Qaeda as the government of beloved Syria, the jewel in the crown of the Arab world, this once glorious entity of Arab nationalism, and we're supposed to accept that the existence of an ISIS Al-Qaeda government in Syria is some kind of vindication of Trump's policy? You are investing Donald Trump with a level of strategic thinking that's completely at odds with what everyone's eyes can see and ears can hear. Donald Trump is a drooling, driveling, rapist, murderer, liar, cheat, deceiver, and you're telling us it's Trump's world, that he's got it all figured out? Jesus, man. I thought I couldn't get worked up at 4 o'clock in the morning, but I nearly could. Bobby McPherson says, hi George, another tenner on its way to you on top of my monthly subscription. That's the spirit, Bobby. Because of the World Cup and the summer dip in our audience, always happens when the summer holidays are here, and even more when there's World Cup matches on in direct competition to us, our income has fallen over the last few weeks. So your extra tenner is very helpful. Stay safe and well. Keep fighting, says Bobby. I'm wondering how to get out of the UK. I would rather die in Russia than live here right now. I'm in Scotland. Well, I'm sorry to say that that's what many people feel, Bobby. Our country is going down the drain, and I'm not able to be there to help you, except insofar as my writing and speaking can do so from abroad. Okay, Judge Andrew Napolitano, the famous and august judge that should have been at the head of the Justice Department, that should have been sitting on the Supreme Court. Their loss, our gain. Judge Knapp is with me now as our guest on the Mother of All Talk Shows. Your Excellency, very good to see you again. I hope we have an uninterrupted conversation, because our internet has been playing up this evening. I wanted to start with a friend of ours who was on the show but 3 nights ago and has been on your show. I think he's maybe the finest young American. Max Blumenthal was seized and his equipment seized by the American state just the other day on his return from doing his job as a journalist as a broadcaster at the funeral of the Ayatollah Khamenei. Were the American government behaving lawfully in seizing his equipment on that occasion?
Well, George, good evening. It's always a pleasure to be with you. The American government was behaving lawfully but unconstitutionally, if you can understand that dichotomy. Congress has enacted legislation which says that when you're entering a border, you don't have your Fourth Amendment rights to privacy. But Congress can't repudiate the Constitution, which is the supreme law of the land. The Constitution says that he has his right to privacy wherever he goes. That is a right to privacy insulating him from all American governments, federal, state, and local. He, of course, asked them for a warrant. They didn't have it. He asked them for a subpoena. They didn't have it. He wasn't going to resist violently, so they took his devices. Within 48 hours of them taking his devices, he filed a lawsuit against the head of the Department of Homeland Security. On the day he filed the lawsuit, an agent of the Border Patrol called his home and said, please come to Dulles International Airport. We want to return your electronic devices to you. So he has them back. The lawsuit proceeds, George, because we don't know what they downloaded, what information they stole from him. They, even under this law, can do what they need is necessary to secure the country at the entry point, but they cannot gain access to whatever they steal from you. They have absolutely no right to do that. So now that he has these devices back, they're in the hands of his experts, his lawyers' experts, who will advise the lawyers, who will advise the court what the feds did with these devices when they stole them. On top of the theft of these devices, they interrogated him for 2.5 hours. They interrogated him about his friends. That would include the two people speaking to each other on this show right now. They interrogated him about his sources of income, all of which are lawful and lawfully reported to the Internal Revenue Service. They interrogated him about why he went to the Ayatollah's funeral. Why? It was the largest gathering of humanity in the history of the world. It was covered by journalists from all over the world. The question is not why was he there. The question is, why the hell are you asking me questions about why I was there? It's my job to be there. So Max, as you know, I just interviewed him myself about an hour ago about all of this, is as tough as nails, as intellectually honest as the day is long, as courageous as George Galloway, and as fearless as George Galloway. But this shouldn't happen to anybody. It's happened to you. It'll probably happen to me, although I just re-entered the country from Italy, fully expecting this treatment, but I didn't get it. But this is the second time this has happened to Max.
It is worrying, but thank you indeed for your comparisons. It would be a very brave border guard that would seek to divest of his devices the famous Judge Andrew Napolitano and to face your wrath. I can't imagine. I'm trying to imagine a border guard trying to do that, and I hope it never happens. But staying on that seam for a moment, Your Honor, the president of Venezuela, the legitimate president of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro, is in a New York courtroom right now, or was earlier today, contesting the illegal seizure that he and his wife suffered. What can you tell us about what went on in court? And if you still feel, as you did when I last asked you this question, that Maduro could actually beat this rap, at least in New York?
I'll answer the second question first. I still feel he can beat the rap. The charges against him are very thin. They're largely manufactured. And the government's chief witness is himself someone who's been convicted of bribery and other financial crimes. The entire case was made up. The kidnapping was unlawful. Unfortunately, under American law, if the government kidnaps you from a place where you're unlawfully entitled to be and brings you into a courtroom, that does not diminish the government's case against you. It may give you a cause of action against the government for kidnapping, but it does not diminish the government's case against you. As for what happened today, today was what we call a scheduling conference. It's rather bland, boring, and uneventful. The judge says to defense counsel, what motions, what applications are you going to make? Well, we're going to move to dismiss the indictment. We're going to move to suppress the evidence. We're going to move to release him from federal custody during the trial. And the judge will say, okay, here's the date on which I want you to file these motions. He'll then look at the government lawyers and say, here's the date on which you'll have to respond to these motions. Here's the date on which I'll hear oral argument, and then I'll rule. And if the case still survives after I rule, here's the trial date. Now, I don't know what the trial date is, but I've conducted hundreds and hundreds of these what we call scheduling hearings, so that's pretty much what happened in the courtroom today. As far as I know, I mean, I've been in a studio all day today, but I would have heard this if anything happened. As far as I know, nothing dramatic, untoward, or significant happened. But I will tell you, and I said this the last time we talked about this, George, this judge, who is 96 years old, is no friend of the government. In fact, prosecutors fear coming into his office, or into his chamber, into his courtroom, because he has said things like, the Bill of Rights means what it says, doesn't it? Now, I'm the only other judge that I know that has said that from the bench, other than this Judge Hellerstein.
Well, the whole audience will be praying for his even longer life, and I hope the scheduling he's doing isn't too elongated, not to tempt fate, but 96, God bless him, and long may he live. Now, widening the lens, but staying with legal matters, Your Honor, Donald Trump is breaking international law, the law established at Nuremberg, by the hour on social media. The President of the United States is hourly threatening to carry out what are and have been designated as clear war crimes, crimes against humanity. Bombing electricity, bombing water, bombing civilian bridges, infrastructure that the civilian population, in this case 93 million civilians in Iran, every hour virtually he is making a new and ever more blood-curdling threat to commit war crimes. Is there nothing can be done legally?
Well, there's nothing that can be done legally while he's in office. As you know, and you and I have discussed this, former President George W. Bush has been indicted. I mistakenly said invited. He's not going to accept the invitation. Indicted in the EU, so he cannot travel to the EU. He'd be arrested. He wouldn't have diplomatic immunity. Donald Trump could suffer the same fate once he's out of office. Under EU and ICC, the International Criminal Court regulations, you need not be indicted by the country who suffered as a result of your crime. So this would not have to be done by anybody in Iran. Bush was indicted by a Spanish magistrate for leading the United States into war against Iraq on the pretense of weapons of mass destruction. We now know that he then knew that there were no weapons of mass destruction. As a result, more than 500,000 people died. This, of course, is a war crime and mass murder on an enormous scale. Trump himself could be indicted by the ICC or by a magistrate in the EU similarly. But again, this would not happen until he's out of office. The Supreme Court of the United States has made the president a king. Henry VIII could only have wished for the immunity that the Supreme Court has given Donald Trump, but that immunity evaporates the minute he's no longer in office.
Which, of course, will not be that long delayed. I pray that God grants us a long enough life to see that and its aftermath develop. But you mentioned the ICC. Rubio, I think this week, expressed his intention to dismantle the ICC. A court which the United States is not a member of, I remind the audience, a court that the United States opposed its formation, but a court that nonetheless it has sought to direct as to whom it should arrest and put on trial. But the high official, second highest official, or perhaps third highest official of the United States, has stated it's your government's intention to dismantle the International Criminal Court. And nobody has said a thing about it. In fact, the chief prosecutor, a King's Counsel from my own country, is currently before a kangaroo court to try and dismiss him from his job, Karim Khan, KC, on trumped-up charges, precisely because he sought an arrest warrant for Benjamin Netanyahu. It's quite a state of affairs.
I don't think anybody takes seriously Secretary of State Rubio's threat to dismantle the court. I mean, the court is a 1998 amendment to the Treaty of Rome, which was ratified and signed by all countries on the planet except for about 5 or 6, among which are the United States and Israel. It would take a similar gathering as gathered in Rome in 1998 to vote to dismantle the court. That is not likely. It's not probable. It's probably not even possible that something like that could happen in the remaining years of Trump's term. But this shows you the bullying aspect, the pig-headedness, the ignorance, the absence of a recognition of natural rights that pervades the Trump administration for Secretary Rubio to make a statement like this. I mean, 2 days ago, this may get a little off the topic, but I think you'll appreciate the line, and it brings us back to Max Blumenthal. 2 days ago, the State Department issued a white paper, although it's actually in black, setting forth how dangerous Cuba is to the United States of America, and how Cuban agents have infiltrated the State Department. So when I was asking Max Blumenthal about this, I said, have Cuban agents infiltrated the State Department? He said, well, of course, Marco Rubio and his South Miami buddies have infiltrated the State Department.
Very good.
I mean,
Very
that
good.
part of it is laughable.
Very good.
But the threat
it's true,
to use
of course,
violence.
Your Honor, that they yeah. Well, I mean, the United States did pass an Invasion of the Hague Act, which allows the U.S. to literally invade the Netherlands should any inconvenient prosecution take place of an American official or for that matter, member of the military. Now, I appreciate your point that they don't have the authority to dismantle the court, but there's more than one way to skin a cat. They have, for example, frozen the bank accounts and taken away the credit cards of prominent judges of the International Criminal Court. And a slight digression, your ethnic compatriot, the blessed Francesca Albanese, made her life impossible. I mean, she's now living, I think, in Tunisia because it was impossible for her job in New York as an official of the United Nations, because they basically made it impossible for her to be paid and for her to get her salary or to buy bread in the shops.
I'm sorry to hear that they have done that. They have done it to our mutual friend, Colonel Jacques Beau of Switzerland, and from time to time they do that. It's reprehensible and it should be redressed by a court. She has a cause of action in an American court. I don't know what EU law is, but this cannot happen in the United States. If she was living in the U.S. and had a credit card and was receiving funds in an American bank, she's entitled to all of that. Now, maybe she doesn't want to sue. Maybe she doesn't want to come back to the U.S. I wouldn't blame her. But this is a violation of very fundamental principles of American law.
Referred to heretofore are, of course, not just threats on social media. They are, in fact, being carried out. And the gravest amongst them, though not the, perhaps in terms of quantum, in terms of the victims, the 176 or more little girls. Now, I'm the father of little girls and the grandfather of little girls. Little girls are precious, more precious than anything I can imagine, but who were laid in the grave, or at least parts of them were laid in the grave in Minab this very day. Some people were burying pieces of skin identified by DNA, others body parts identified by DNA. Donald Trump continues to say that the United States was not responsible for this, despite the preliminary findings of the Pentagon's own inquiry, which indicates that the United States likely was. Trump continues to say that somebody else may have had and had the ability to fire not one, but 2 Tomahawk missiles in a double tap operation in one of the, in my view, one of the greatest war crimes since the Second World War. It is astounding that Trump can continue this bovine and plainly lying, mendacious insistence that there's no evidence that the US did that. In your view, is there?
Oh, in my view, there's more than ample evidence that the United States did it. There's enough evidence from the Pentagon's preliminary report. They have probably conducted a secondary, more thorough report, which they won't reveal unless a judge forces them to. This would require, I'm sorry to say, but it can happen. It happened with Trump's killing boat people in the Caribbean. 2 of them survived, and they hired American lawyers to sue. Soon those American lawyers will get all the government's documents. So if the survivors, if the parents of any of these girls who were slaughtered by the Americans double tap, that is, you send a bomb to open up a hole in the building, and then you send another bomb through that hole to to destroy everyone and everything in it. That's what the double tap is. That's clearly what happened here. It would require a lawsuit in an American court, and that would force the government to respond and compel the government to cough up all of its documents, all of its plannings, everybody who was involved in this thing. By the time that happens, Trump will be out of office and will have lost his immunity.
I pray for that day and to come as soon as possible. Your Excellency, thank you for joining us for that tour of the judicial horizon. How I wish that you were in a position of power in the United States judicial system. How all of us wish that the wisdom and courage that you show every day on judging freedom was the prevailing order in the United States. My gratitude to you, sir. Thanks for joining us on the Mother of All Talk Shows. Judge Andrew Napolitano, host of Judging Freedom. Thanks for joining us. Let's go to what will be a last call, I think. Dean in Vancouver. Dean, welcome.
Thanks, Professor Galloway, and respect to Judge Napolitano and Professor Marandi. And I send my love and respect to you, your family, and your team. I'll go as quick as I can. I know we're short. I believe Iran has not forgotten. I believe Iran has not forgotten about the Gazans. But let's get to my main point and then your comments on it. I believe that the use of nuclear munitions has always been in the plan. I think all the stories that we've heard circulated about preventing nuclear weapons and regime change has been false disinformation propaganda. We've seen the systematic transgression of every human right red line violated by Israel. We have to consider that this has been fully endorsed by the so-called socioeconomic elite of the so-called West. And is it part of a larger depopulation event? Getting normalization of nuclear weapons would fit this pattern. So that's my position. And how do you consider that? What do you think about this theory? I'm just analyzing the trends here.
Well, if they use a nuclear weapon against Iran's nuclear sites, by definition, you will have a nuclear event of very great magnitude. It will not be Hiroshima or Nagasaki because the nuclear sites in question are in the mountains and not areas of huge population. At least the Pickaxe Mountain would fit that description. But whatever is in Pickaxe Mountain would then explode if the nuclear attack were to succeed. So you have a double event. You have the explosion of a US tactical nuclear warhead, though it would, I think, have to be two to be certain of the penetration of the granite. But if it were one or two, obviously it would be event by the explosion of the material therein and the radiation from both the attacking weapon and the exploding nuclear material, which would be an event many, many times as potent as Chernobyl could have been, wasn't, due to the courage and skill of the engineers and scientists who worked so hard to mitigate it. But even mitigate it, it was a very considerable emission of nuclear radiation. So it would not only be an Iranian event, it would be bound to, when the wind shifted, it would be bound to affect in a very serious way the surrounding countries in the Persian Gulf. There are many, and most are allies of the United States. So it is not a small matter at all if Donald Trump is to make that decision. If he has made it, then it will cause nuclear radiation to spread throughout the region, and the sickness of cancer through radiation to spread perhaps exponentially amongst the civilian population, both in Iran and in the neighborhood. I don't believe that that would constitute a depopulation event. A depopulation event is much more likely to be caused by the deliberate leak of biological warfare materials, such as may have been the case in the COVID-19 event. The evidence is mounting that the United States facilities in Wuhan, China, was the source of what may have been a deliberate leak of a biological agent which spread terror, economic devastation, excess death rates across the whole world and affected millions of people, and could well have ended exponentially worse than it actually did. And the fear is that a similar kind of event for depopulation purposes may, of course, be in the pipeline, may, of course, be in the plan. It's a very interesting call, Dean. I thank you for it. Finally, before I end this evening, let's give proper recognition to another group of heroes. The Moats supporters tonight who broke the bank with their support. Godfrey A. Waters, Ahmad Khalaf, Carlos Navarro, Fernandez, Richard Sellers, and Heather Smith. They're heroes. You can be a hero. Didn't David Bowie tell you that? You can be heroes just by going to moats.tv right now and leaving your donation. I passed a busker in the street here in China this evening. I only tarried a minute or two to listen. It was excellent, first class, but I only had a minute or two because I had to get back. For 2 minutes, I gave him the equivalent of £5 because I didn't have the gall to listen to a man perform and then walk away without putting something in his hat. You've been listening to me, albeit in a disrupted way, for 2 hours. And I'll be back again on Sunday, God willing. I'm asking you, go to moats.tv and give what you can. You don't have to be given £5 or a 2-minute busk. Just leave £1, $1, or €1. If you all do that, you'll help a very great deal. Good night.